I spent a lot of time in my life early on thinking that I needed to achieve some extraordinary financial success or professional success in order to feel a sense of achievement and a sense of happiness.
Yep.
And that was always proven right to me by the fact that every time I achieved some level of financial success or achievement, that I didn't feel happy, and that there was some other thing that I was like, oh, then I'll feel happy, whatever it is. When I get X, then I'll be happy. I kept doing that. And so it was self-affirming because I knew, okay, well, I'm not happy at making $1 million. Now I'm going to make 10 million. Now I made 10 million. All right, well, it's got to be 100 million will be when I feel really happy, and then I'll have what I need. And I've completely given that up. I mean, I am more happy, fulfilled, and joyful on a daily basis today than I've ever been in my entire life.
Health, fitness, mindset, nutrition. Live better and longer. I'm Saad Alam, and let's hone in. Talk to me about the time billionaire concept, right? It's one of your tweets, one of the concepts that's kind of gone viral. We've talked about it a lot internally.
Yeah. So the first time I had ever heard this mentioned was Graham Duncan. He's an investor on the Tim Ferriss show. He talked about this idea that we glorify dollar billionaires in our society, but that time billionaires we never talk about. The whole idea is that when you are 20 years old, you have about 2 billion seconds left if you're going to live until you're 80. There's about 30 years in a billion seconds. And you are a time billionaire at 20 years of age. At 50 years of age, you're still a time billionaire. You have 1 billion seconds left in your life. But we don't relate to ourselves that way. We don't think about the fact that our time is ticking down and it's so finite and so precious. A huge part of being a time billionaire in my mind is actually just appreciating and understanding the precious nature of our time, how little of it we have, how quickly it goes away, and how precious the time is with the people who have less of it than we do left as well, our parents, older people in our lives. I have thought about this more and more. I mean, if you've followed my content, you know that since my son was born, time has been so top of mind for me. A big reason for that is that when you have a kid, all of a sudden you measure your life in weeks and months, which you've never done in your entire life. I mean, when have you ever sat down and been like, oh, I'm 30 years old in 7 weeks? Like, you just don't do it. That's not how you measure time. But when you have a kid, everyone asks you, oh, how old are they? And you say like 6 weeks, 9 weeks, 3 months, 17 weeks, whatever. People say all these different numbers, and everything is measured in weeks and months. And it makes you so aware of the passage of time. And it makes you so aware of the fact that it's flying by with them. Like the whole saying of the days are long, but the years are short is so true. I mean, he just turned 1. I feel like it's a blink of an eye since he was born. And we've had all these unbelievable moments. I'm around every single day. I barely travel anymore. I'm really present in there, but it flies by. And I'm not going to get that many more of those moments. I mean, even like now, we'll have him in bed before we go to bed at night. And he does this thing where he'll I'm sitting on my side of the bed and he'll look upside down at me, like look back over his head and be like smiling at me and wanting to play. And I took a picture of him the other night because I said to my wife, like, I have no idea how many more times he's going to do that. Like make this funny upside down face at me smiling. I mean, it might be a year. I don't know. Maybe even less. And I want to remember it. Like I want to have that picture in my mind because I can see it so vividly right now. But 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, when I'm 70, 80 years old, I'm going to wish that I had that moment back. And it's such a call to action to when times are stressful and frustrating on a daily basis, and this applies to kids, it also applies just to anything that you're doing in life when you're young. When you're 80, when you're 70, when you're 60, you would give anything to be back in that frustrating moment at age 30. And it's such a powerful realization that that's going to be the case because it just makes you want to grind through whatever this moment is and just appreciate it for what it is. Appreciate the texture, the stress, whatever it is that you're feeling in the moment, rather than rejecting it and wanting to fast forward through it. Just embrace it and go through it, walk through it, go through the mud in a certain way with the people that you love and that you're around, because someday you really are going to miss it and wish that you had it back.
2 things. First is, I'll never forget the moment that I felt like I was given time back in my life, right? And so this is going to sound silly. I just turned 35. And I was kind of bummed because in my mind, for some reason, I had this mental leap. You're 35, you're probably through more than halfway through your career. You're going to be 50 pretty soon. People start to mail it in right after 50, right? Which is a silly thing for a child now when I think about it to think. I ended up going with a friend for his 50th birthday party, and I told him about the way I was feeling. And he's like, well, look, you believe you're going to live until you're 120, right? I said, 100%, wholeheartedly. I think the medical advances are in place in order for that to happen. He said, well, if you think you're going to live until 120 and you think you're going to do it in pretty good health, it's almost like you have another 70 good years of life ahead of you, or discounting the kind of crappier years at the end. And I said, oh my God, you're right. He said, if you realize you're actually going to live longer, it's almost like you were 18 years old with now we'll call it the bank account and the wisdom of a 35-year-old. Mm-hmm. And I remember in that moment, I literally went, oh my God, you're completely right. I am in my infancy if I believe I'm going to be living a little bit longer here. And it was the most liberating and empowering feeling because all of a sudden, it literally just from thinking about it, made me feel 20 years younger. As you're going forward in your life and you've, I would say, discovered this concept, and it's really been like a gift that's been given to you, right? Because you never thought about it like this before. How do you live your life differently?
I would say I spend much more time focusing on eulogy virtues versus resume virtues. Mm-hmm. David Brooks, author, writer, wrote about this. I think it's like maybe in 2015, he wrote an op-ed in the New York Times that just talked about the difference between resume virtues and eulogy virtues. Resume virtues are the things that show up on your resume. It's like the things that you want to stand out. It's like your LinkedIn page, you know, all the accomplishments, the achievements, whatever. Eulogy virtues are the things that people say about you at your funeral. Whether you were caring, loving, if you had the capacity to have courage, loyalty, the things that really matter in the end. And I spend much more time today thinking about that than I do about any resume virtues. I really just want to, I would say I've given up my I spent a lot of time in my life early on thinking that I needed to achieve some extraordinary financial success or professional success in order to feel a sense of achievement and a sense of happiness. Yep. And that was always proven right to me by the fact that every time I achieved some level of financial success or achievement, that I didn't feel happy, and that there was some other thing that I was like, oh, then I'll feel happy, whatever it is. When I get X, then I'll be happy. I kept doing that. And so it was self-affirming because I knew, okay, well, I'm not happy at making $1 million. Now I'm going to make 10 million. Now I made 10 million. All right, well, it's got to be 100 million will be when I feel really happy, and then I'll have what I need. And I've completely given that up. Mm-hmm. I mean, I am more happy, fulfilled, and joyful on a daily basis today than I've ever been in my entire life. And I don't want to change it. I mean, honestly, I don't want anything to ruin that. I don't want to change that by doing some taking on some dramatic new thing or trying to make some leap at some, new opportunity. I constantly am asking myself, what am I saying no to by saying yes to this? And I evaluate every opportunity through that lens because when I think about it, what am I saying no to? It's time with my son.
Yep.
No matter what it is. And so the opportunity has to be so incredible that I'm willing to say no to time with my son in order to take it on. I mean, you could literally sit here today and say, I will give you $100 million to work 80 hours a week for the next 2 years. And that's oh my God, unbelievable, generational wealth for whatever. And I would say no. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't even have to think about it, to be totally honest, because I just don't want to do that. I don't know what I would do with $100 million if you gave it to me. Nothing interesting enough that I would give up 2 years of time with my son during the prime of my time with him. Mm-hmm. Nothing. There's just nothing. Yeah, I could pay for his college. I don't know, but I'll be able to do that. Whatever, I'll figure it out. Yep. It's just money. And that to me is a really, really liberating sensation that I have one thing that I know I'm not willing to say no to. for any new opportunity out there. It allows me to cut through the noise. And it means that if I am going to say yes to some new opportunity, something else has to kind of go. I'm not actually just going to take on 10 new things in order to make twice as much money or whatever it is. It really needs to have something that is so deeply meaningful to me that it really matters and can sit alongside the things that I really care about in the end.